Hi there, this is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of OutBüro Voices, where we have engaging conversations with LGBTQ professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders from around the world. And today we're very happy to be speaking with Max Appenroth. He is from Berlin, Germany, and is working in the diversity and inclusion space with a keen focus on issues related to the transgender community. Welcome to the show, Max.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Well, absolutely. I cannot possibly talk about what you do as well as you can. So, how about you give us a brief overview of really kind of your journey as to
Mhm.
what got you started in working in diversity and inclusion, some of the issues and so forth that maybe sparked that passion for you. And then we'll get into really what you're striving to do today.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, again, thank you for having me on your show, and I'm really excited to talk about my work, and also because I know that this is like multiplying, and people maybe hear about it, and it's going to trigger some processes, and I'm very excited about that. So I'm currently, like, I describe myself as a trans activist and diversity consultant. Parallel, I'm just finishing up my PhD in public health, because this is where I came from. I come from a research background, and that also somehow has brought me to the work that I'm doing today, that I feel like there needs to be much more work be done around gender diversity. Like, I identify as trans myself. I usually say that, like, at birth, like, someone made a little mistake and like ticked the wrong box of like female, and I've corrected that over the past few years in a way that it feels right and good to me. And because, like, based on my personal experiences, like, I have felt, or like I still feel, what it's like to not be accepted for who I am. Even living in Germany, which has always been seen as like this liberal country and with all these possibilities, and specifically, like, coming from a public health background, everyone thinks like Germany is so great in terms of healthcare. And I say, like, at the moment with this, like, or having a pandemic in the world, like, Germany will be fine. Like, if I have to go to the hospital, I'm good. But like, in general, the system fails my needs, and that it fails to treat me as someone who, like, falls outside of the norm, whatever the norm is. But like, and this is what I want to do with my work, to kind of like break the barriers, or like the edges of the norm, in order to make it more accessible and more open to everybody. Because I also say, with the work that I'm doing, it's not only helping the trans community or gender diverse people in general, it helps everyone, like, looking outside of the boxes and looking left and right every now and then. This just opens up a way for everyone, with new possibilities and new options, and to live like freely and without any like restriction.
Well, I can definitely see the need for it. Actually, about maybe 6, 8 months ago, I wrote an article about studies, even here in the US, showing how LGBT community, and especially those in the trans community, but the full LGBT community, really do have a difficult time accessing quality health care where they feel safe.
Yeah.
Even even without the added issues of gender variant folks, to have even as a gay person finding a doctor, because not everyone lives even in the US, where you think, like, I live in Fort Lauderdale, and you think, oh my gosh, it's a gay mecca of the US. It's neck and neck with San Francisco as the gayest
Yeah.
place in the US. But still, there's, not all doctors are up to speed on
Yeah.
chatting with them. And so it's a real issue in the community as a whole to find doctors. Just like when you move from one city to the next, what's one of the first things that people do is they ask everyone that they know, who are,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, what doctors do you go to, and
Yeah.
so forth, versus just taking the chance. So I can definitely see in a system where maybe doctors are assigned versus less choice and so forth, that can be a big issue. But
Yeah. But
let's
yeah.
Yeah, but
Sorry for interrupting.
no worries. Well, let's kind of unpack a little bit about what you
Mhm.
very quickly said there. And you said you come from a background in research. So what kind of
Yeah.
research did or do you focus on?
So, I mean, my research is actually on the access to healthcare for trans people with a specific focus on sexual health and HIV prevention, or HIV care and HIV prevention. Because as I said, like, the experiences that I made, and you just said, like, with the choice, like, even in Berlin, I live in the capital of Germany, like the biggest city in Germany. I don't have a choice of doctors where I can go to, because like there is a lack of knowledge. There is a huge gap of, like, that I didn't study medicine, but I know better what happens inside my body than most doctors do. And I need to go, if I go somewhere to get care, I need to explain to them, okay, I'm a trans person. I use these hormones, and this and this and that is happening in my body, and this is what you need to take into consideration. And that doesn't feel right. And this is, with the work that I'm doing, and like specifically the research is like generating knowledge, generating critical knowledge from a trans perspective, as well as then going into care facilities and medical institutions, doctors' offices, and so on, and giving them education about, like, not necessarily how many milligrams of testosterone I need, but like at the same time, like, more how to respectfully approach my community, how to talk to us, how to make a gender inclusive environment, or how to create a gender inclusive environment. This is the work that I'm doing. And I've started, like, with, as I said, care facilities and doctor medical facilities in general, and have now also been invited to sorry, here's a little visitor. It's like living with cats. Sorry.
Well, wait now. Okay. Well, the next time they pop up, at
Next
least
time I'll
turn their face around and make an introduction.
I'll make an introduction. Like, she's now sitting here on the desk, and I can just say, like, you can say hello. This is little Dörte. Hello.
Oh, well, hello,
She's a
hello.
she's a cutie. Like, I've started, as I said, in medical, like in the medical environment in general, in order to make these places more accessible to my community. But I've now also been approached by companies that are like, okay, we need to do, like, companies in pharma companies, for example, or like, generally, like, companies that are like, okay, we see that there is a need to change something about what we've been doing so far, and we also need to transport a message out there, like how diverse maybe our, like, company already is, but we don't know how, because, like, also German is a very gendered language.
Mm-hmm.
And you always need to figure out, how to represent yourself and what to include, how to speak to people in, like, on your website and so on. And that is what I've also started to do, in order to make these spaces more accessible, or like to have them show what's behind that company, but at the same time also to tell them what they can do to improve the environment, to make it more comfortable for trans people to actually work there.
Understand. And yes, when we first spoke, we had that conversation about language. And,
Yeah.
as for English speaking people, especially for those who've never studied a foreign language, it might seem odd that, nouns and verbs and so forth, they're either masculine or feminine in
Exactly.
most
Like, just
romantic
imagine.
languages.
Yeah. Just
And
imagine, the table is like it's a he. It's like, it's a masculine thing, or the door is a she, and it's like, it's just, who knows why, but that's
right.
just how it is.
Right. Someone thousands of years ago, or, made choices to call a tape,
Yeah.
identify a table as masculine. That's,
Yeah.
and like you said, in a door, it's just, it's odd from an English speaking perspective that
Yeah.
that is an issue. And of course, also what that complicates things is based on the gender of the word of the table, you also have to then conjugate it differently.
Exactly.
Mein Freund, meine Freundin, and you would
Exactly.
think, yeah, it's complicated, and so it's very interesting how that can even play a role in how someone feels about themselves because of the words, even that aren't necessarily directly related to them, but it's
Yeah.
the language itself is set up to be
Exactly.
more or less binary.
I mean, I keep saying that, like language shapes reality, and the language that we use really, influences the way how we experience ourselves and how we experience our environment. And the problem, again, with, for example, in maybe some of you know, maybe some of you don't know, but for example, in the English language, if you don't identify with like he or she, if you prefer to use any other pronoun, like the plural pronoun of they is often being used. That, for example, like if you don't know about a person, like the person at the other side of the street, they look nice. If you don't want to call them a he or she, it's like a neutral version of like how to address someone. We don't have that in German, because like the plural form, like they is like, if it's exactly the same word as she, just with a capital S sometimes written. It's like, you only see a difference sometimes when it's written, but the sound is the same. And it's like, it's a problem, that because we then started to have something like a mix of he, she, that you say like he, she very quickly, like one after another, like the German version of it, obviously, but like it doesn't, like phonetically, it always feels weird, or it doesn't sound right.
Right.
And
Oh,
we're
and I
still trying
totally
to figure out options that are
and,
appropriate.
and I totally get that. Having lived in Germany and having learned German, although I am a bit rusty now, I totally get that, because Germans love in the past love to take two completely odd words, put them together, and now they mean this.
Yeah,
And
but I mean, that's a different story about.
no,
But yeah,
it is,
we're
but
good at like lining up words one after another to create a new word. We're good at this.
yeah, and as a young, military person who was stationed in Germany, of course, some of the first words you learn in a foreign language are, the curse words.
Yeah,
And
obviously, yeah.
so, I learned Schweinehund. So Schweinehund is Schwein is pig, Hund is dog, pig
Yeah.
dog. Well, that means not what it sounds like. So it was very interesting to learn the language, and again, because I have learned German, I can totally relate with what you're saying. And I think really for our audience out there, anyone who has or knows another language or so forth can identify with that. I think it's just going to be possibly for people who are English speaking, who have never been exposed to foreign languages and so forth, might find that like, oh, interesting, odd,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So hopefully someone or several folks out there just became aware of that. um, so um, so now you are, if I'm not mistaken, you're in the process of forming your own company to focus on
Exactly.
diversity and
Yeah.
inclusion. And so tell us a little bit about that and your journey. And, when was your aha moment that you went from kind of that research and or maybe working for someone else and, thought, oh, no, I really need to focus on this, and here's why, and
Mhm.
I think I can do something with this.
I mean, it has, let's say, like it has two different perspectives. Like the one perspective is that I see an increasing interest in gender diversity in general, that I'm being approached by different, like different people who are like, hey, I've heard about your work. Can you come to us and do the same? Like, can you have a look at my company? Can you have a look at my, whatever physiotherapy office? And can you tell me what can I do to improve the situation? Like, what can I do to be more inclusive of trans people? That is like the one part that I see, as I said, the increasing interest. And also, like people hear about trans people and they don't really like, it's sometimes it's even weird that people don't even know who we are or what we are, because like it's often conflated or like put into the box of sexuality, that people think the way I am, who I am, is like a fetish or like a sexual desire, which I'm like, no, my identity is the feeling towards myself, and how like my sexuality is the feeling towards others. And this is even like the basics some people don't understand.
Right.
And if we're getting beyond, like the basic part, like this is something that I usually take off very quickly, that I give people explanations with, my personal experiences, which also makes them relate to it not as a theoretical thing, but like to make it like to relate to me as a human being, and to see that my experience is something that is not just something, like abstract that they don't understand and can't follow, because like I tell them, and this and this and that is what happened. This is the experience that I had in this and that day in XYZ environment, and people understand that this is a real lived experience. And I think this is also what makes it so valuable for a lot of people, or to understand it better than just, like reading about it in a book. And the other part is also for me that I was like now 7 years ago, I had a like a so-called adrenal burnout. That means like my adrenal glands were just like completely exhausted from all the stress that I had in my life. It was the time when I went through my legal gender recognition here in Germany, which was one of the worst processes I ever endured. And my body just told me, no, you just need to shut down, you just need to relax, and you just need to, regain strength.
Yeah,
And
and
because
that's
of
a forcible situation, right? I mean, with especially
it
with
was
that
a forced
medical issue.
situation. It was a forced situation that I had to take measures in order to protect myself, to protect my life, because my body told me, what you're doing right now, this is not sustainable. And ever since that time, I have started to implement self-care measures into my daily life. But that means, like I regularly go to see a therapist, like to help me to cope with like different situations, to reflect on situations. I do a lot of sports. I do specific things, just like spending time with myself and focusing and caring for myself. The problem with that is that takes time. And working, like as an employee in whatever company, like we have average working hours of 40 hours a week. That doesn't work. Like it's something that is that there's no time for like before or after work. Like if you work full time, it's really hard to fit that into your daily life. And I know that this is for the situation for a lot of trans people, and this is why I decided for myself, I can't work in these normal or normative structures. I need to create a structure for myself as a self-employed person. On the other hand, that brings its own risks, being self-employed, not having a background that supports you whenever you're sick or whatever. But at the same time, I can, like, I'm my own boss, and I can determine the time myself, and I can take, especially a lot of trans people, as I said, need these like self-care measures, or need more time to cope with difficult situations in life, because we also experience more difficulties than like cis people. And that was one, like the other part of the decision why I said like, okay, I need to do that. And I mean, I still work probably more than 40 hours a week, but I can do this at whatever day and times I want to do this, and not from 9 to 5. And yeah.
Right. Yes, I totally understand. And there's definitely been a theme within my interviews of talking about self-care. And actually just recently released an episode with a British fella, and he had a similar situation where he had burnout due to just overworking, overcompensating in work, and kind of, constantly trying to strive to fit into the norms and the expectations of others, versus focusing on his own health, his own success, his own happiness as he defines it. And I think that's really important for everyone to hear, because as LGBTQ folks, we have a tremendous more amount of societal pressures from a young age all the way growing up, whether trans or
we're being questioned all the time. We're being questioned all the time, and we need to give proof all the time that we're like valid, that we belong, that we this is something that we have to do on a constant basis. And I'm hoping that with the work that I'm doing and trying to create work environments that are maybe aware of that, it's not only about trans issues, but it's also about like, people with other with other needs, whatever that is like either living, like caring for children, living with a chronic disease, living with a disability, living, with whatever other trauma people bring. Like everyone brings their own little package. And like trying with the trainings that I give is trying to make employers aware of these things and what they can do to make life a little bit easier, or like okay, even just okay for people to talk about these issues, to be like, okay, listen, sorry, but I need to leave early today because I have this important appointment that I need to do for myself. I need to take care of myself in order to be back here at my desk tomorrow in the morning. And this is something, the added value that employers might actually understand, or like hopefully will understand in the future, that if they give people the option to have, like extra hours a week where that are dedicated just for self-care, or for, like something like to empower the people, again, that this in the end will also have a benefit for the company and for, like, the work environment in its whole picture.
Well, I definitely agree with you. And, because if you don't take care of yourself and you're not fully charged and you don't feel safe at work, you're
Yeah.
not going to be giving your full self. You're not
No,
going to be
you can't
giving,
strive.
right. And also, you're going to be, again, if you're not in a welcoming and safe space, you're not giving your full effort and your full creativity. And
Yeah.
study after study shows that when an employer does embrace diversity and inclusion to its fullest, they actually improve their financial bottom line by on average 30%. That's
Yeah.
huge. And so being adaptive, and maybe one of the good things perhaps out of this COVID global pandemic is companies realizing, major companies are realizing that allowing employees to work from home is beneficial. And when working from home, having that flexible schedule, whether they work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or whether they work from 6 a.m. to 3, or maybe they take a couple hours during the day
Yeah.
and work a little bit later at night, or even if they so choose, work on the weekend, but still maintain a healthy balance in their work-life structure to ensure that they have their own time. I mean, like
That is important. Yeah. Like to keep the hours, like, that you don't increase the hours, because you see if you bring work back home, and this is also something that I had to learn, and I'm still learning to deal with it, because, you always see your workplace, like, certain trades, they can bring work back home, because like if I'm actually, like, I'm a trained carpenter, and I could not bring, like whatever big chunk of wood back home and just be like, oh yeah, I'll do this on my couch in the evening. Like that doesn't work. But like the work that I'm doing today, I see my computer, I see my desk whenever I walk around the flat, whenever I walk in my living room, because my desk is in my living room. And this is something that you need to be careful, that you're not like, oh, I'm going to quickly check my emails because they are there. This is something to be mindful, and to really also like keep the boundaries of like working hours where they should be, in order not to overwork, because this is, I think, what happens at the moment a lot. And also we're in a lockdown, like what else is there to do? Of course, I work, because I can't do much else.
right. And being an entrepreneur, boy, it's never ending.
There's always work to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I myself work 10 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
But I have a goal, and until I reach that goal and can hire staff to take some of the work that I already can put off to someone else,
Yeah.
is, I just feel, well, it's got to get done, and who else is going to do it? I joke with people, and I say, well, because of this pandemic, the factory for clones is behind schedule, so my 3 clones that I have ordered has not yet arrived.
They're not delivering. Yeah.
Unfortunately. But so one of the things that I do every day is I walk 4 miles, which is about an hour and a half for me in walking. And for me, it's self-reflective time when I'm getting out, I'm getting fresh air, getting a bit of exercise. Although, boy, with this pandemic, have I put on a few pounds. I need to lose big time. But I find too that whenever I do that, is and again, it's every day, but when I'm on my walk, sometimes I'm just saying hello to the neighborhood dogs and throwing a ball with them every now and then. But I will sometimes be thinking about even my work or problems that I'm having, or an article that I want to write, or even technical issues. And while I'm sitting at my desk here at my laptop, everything's kind of bombarding me in my brain. But but I'll take a break and go, okay, I'm a little bit mentally overwhelmed right now. So I go for my walk, and I do that at mornings, afternoons, evenings. I have no set schedule for it, but it happens every day. But whenever I do it, is I will often think about like a technical problem for the website, and then on the walk, boom, a solution comes to my brain. And I come back, and something that I was struggling on for several hours, like all morning, all of a sudden I think about the potential solution, come back, implement that, and it's like, whoa, it works, yay. And
but
so
this is
it allows that time, to kind of marinate the thoughts. And so
absolutely.
there's many benefits to it. It's not, and I like to tell people too, I have some new neighbors, and of course I work from home, and so I'll even just be sitting outside in my in a lace chair, in a chair, and getting a little bit of sun, but I'm actually thinking about my work. And it's so funny. So I joke with them. I say it might not look like I'm working, but I am.
Yeah, but that is exactly the point, where we come back to what we were talking about before. It's like a change of perspectives. It's like sometimes you just really, and if it's just a physical change of perspectives, that you go to the other side of the room, that you work from the couch or from the kitchen table instead of from your desk, like sometimes that already can help. And that is the same what I tried telling companies and the places where I go to deliver my workshops, is like sometimes you just need to have a different perspective, and someone coming from the queer community, or like specifically trans people, like the perspective that I have on life, on people, on society, on ideas, like because I had to think around so many corners so many times in my life, so I know how it is and how to look from the different perspectives, and that is a value that I bring to the place where I work for. And this is something that needs to be embraced. And this is also, like not only trans people, but like, as I said, queer people or people in general from marginalized communities that have different, different views on society, because they sometimes they have to look up at people because they're being put down in this, in a situation where they're being made inferior. It's like, already that is a different perspective, but that is also like, that can change, because like from everything that you experience and what you have to fight for, that gives you experience, and to bring that into a company is something that should be valued, and that should be also seen as an opportunity to often think outside of the box. And like, I mean, who else can do that if not queer people?
Well, absolutely. And again, for everyone listening out there, study after study shows that when you do this, your company can benefit as much as 30% financial gain. So it's not only creating an incredible workspace, but you can financially benefit too. That's a great 1-2 punch, right?
Well, I
So
mean, like it shouldn't be like, certainly companies shouldn't be doing this only for the money. They should be doing it because it's also, ethically the right thing. And it's also, it's, society is changing. Society is just, it's changing all the time. We're evolving ever since, humankind has been there. Like, change is happening, and you can either stem yourself against this change, and you will just, like eventually will be left behind and like stand on the same spot that where you are today, or you're actually going like, okay, I'll have to admit, even if I don't share these values right now, but maybe it's okay to actually change the perspective and look at what other people are experiencing or what is going on, and to give, like, I don't even tell people, like, just because I'm trans and because the way I identify, I'm not taking anything away from anyone. I'm not taking away like manhood, womanhood, whatever that is. Like, I have no idea what these concepts are. It doesn't work for me, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work for other people, and that's okay. And I accept that. That's perfectly fine. But the same way, I want to be accepted for who I am, and just that people understand that I'm not a threat to anyone. It's just, an addition to what is already existing. And trans people have existed for hundreds, thousands, millions of years. We've always been there. It may be that we appear to become more visible right now, but at the same time, it's just part of a change that is continuously happening, and it's just like, why not embracing it and say like, cool, great addition. We're just getting more and more. We're just taking more space altogether, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that is where I'm going. Like that you cannot stop this change, because it will happen no matter if you're on board or not. But I just encourage people to get on board, and even if I have no idea right now, get the information. There's more people like me that give these trainings, that give like education and ideas of who my community is and what our needs and concerns are. And just education wins all the time, I would say.
well, absolutely. And, and it's even, and I'll be very, open here too, is that even within the LGBT community, education is very key. And, like I myself have not had the experiences yet with people to use those other pronouns, to call an individual, like, while we're just sitting here right now, like if you prefer to be called they, to me, that's a little that's foreign. To call
Yep.
a single person in a plural pronoun is just not a common yet thing. And so, but having the dialogues, having the conversations is what makes it become a normal habit and a normal.
You will get used to it. You will. I mean, I don't know. You do you know the four phases of learning? Do you know that concept?
Well, let's share it.
So, I mean, there's this thing of like the first phase is that you don't know what you don't know. So you're completely unaware, like the unknown, like the unknown lack of knowledge, basically. Like from there, someone comes in and tells you, oh, there is something that you don't know. So you become you know what you don't know, like the conscious unknown. And that will then eventually, if you're then, okay, I understand, I didn't know what these pronouns are, but thanks for explaining. And then you try to learn more about it and to implement it in your daily life. And then you have the like the conscious knowledge that you have the knowledge that you just gained and you're aware of it. And that will then in the fourth phase actually go into the unconscious knowledge. For example, the example that I brought earlier, to say like, you see a person on the street, instead of, because like it's a person with a coat, with a hat and a beard, so you would probably think that person, from stereotypical assumptions, it's a man. So you would refer to that person as a he. But because you don't know if that person actually identifies as a he, you would then instead say like, oh, that person over there with the coat, they look nice. That you automatically, without thinking about it, that you automatically refer to people, unless you know better that they identify as he, that you first identify them as they, because you don't know whether or not he or she. So this is something that happens, that then subconsciously or unconsciously, that you automatically do that you implement the knowledge into like subconscious or unconscious actions.
Right. And
does it make sense?
Oh well, absolutely. And for everyone out there, it's like driving a car, right? First, you don't know how to drive a car. Second, you start learning how to drive a car, and it's a little difficult at first. I first learned on a stick shift, which made it even more complicated. And my father teaching me how to drive with a stick shift was extremely impatient. So it was a difficult learning experience, got yelled at a lot. And but then you start to practice it. You put that knowledge of learning into practice. And then all of a sudden, before you realize it, you're driving down the road and you don't even remember how you got from point A to point B, because
things happen automatically. Yeah,
exactly. So taking it outside of the pronoun world so that people can kind of understand, you do this all the time. It's just, this is something new, but it relates to countless situations in your life where you learned new things. So I appreciate you expounding upon that. what's going on in the world? I'm throwing a little bit of a maybe a left field here, but what's going on in the world for you in and around perhaps the transgender community that is new, exciting, different, or anything that you would like to possibly share?
I would say, there's a few things happening right now. It's like, I would say, like, in general, as I said earlier, the interest in gender diversity is growing. Like, there is stuff like it's happening that people are actually like, oh, we have missed out on a few opportunities to include you. The community, have made us aware about that, and now we want to do the right thing. This is something that I experienced, that I think that there in a lot of ways, and also with the, like, I work also for an international NGO called GATE, Global Action for Trans Equality, and I'm specifically like working with the trans masculine and non-binary group to increase, like, to be seen in HIV research and HIV prevention. And what we do is, like, we reach out to funders, to researchers, and be like, listen, hey, you forgot us. You made a great study, but we're not in it. And people are like, oh, wow, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. What can we do to change that in the future? Like, this is something that I experienced, that there's a lot of willingness on the one side, and openness towards the topics of my community. And at the same time, like, what we're seeing right now is that there is a backlash. Like, in certain countries, like, countries have rolled back on trans supportive laws that, like, gender, like, in some countries, for example, like Hungary, where gender recognition was legal, they have revoked that right. We see also, like, in Germany, for example, regarding healthcare again, they have just reintroduced a measure called the everyday experience. That means, like, you have to prove for a certain period of time that you're trans before you can access hormones. That this is actually something, that puts people in danger if they are, like, not outed at work, for example, but they have to prove that they're trans and so on. They might lose their job in order to actually get gender affirming care. And it's just like this whole crap that is happening. And also specifically, like, during the pandemic, like, COVID has made the situation of trans people worldwide even harder. It's like, again, access to healthcare, access to services, like, community groups that are not happening, which are sometimes the only place for trans people to socialize with other people. They're not happening. Of course, it happens virtually, but we all know how exhausting that is, to sit in front of a computer all day, and not to meet up physically with people. And those are just a few examples that are like, very problematic. But I still, I'm still looking with a positive tone into the future. And it's also with the work that I'm doing. I have just recently published a book about healthcare for trans people in German, and there will be next in the next year, like early 2021, there will be an international version of this book coming out with, like, different perspectives, like, from different countries, like a literal global perspective on trans health. And I'm also going to publish a children's book about a transitioning parent, like a story being told, like a story about the transition told from the eyes of a child, how a child actually experiences the transition of their parent. And that is something that I'm personally excited about. And that's happening soon.
Very cool. Well, I look forward to staying in touch with you and having you back to talk about those things. Well, although I know you mentioned not everyone wants to be online, however, I'd like to make sure that you're aware and our audience aware that OutBüro is where you belong. And we have a group for transgender people wanting to, trans people and those seeking to gain additional knowledge. It is called Trans Action. The name could be changed in the future. And actually, we now it only has a few people in it now, as of right now in December 2020, but would love for you and everyone listening to this at whatever time in you are listening to this, to join OutBüro. And if you are trans or just would like to show your support for the community, get to know more, get to know people and so forth, you don't have to be trans to join that particular group, like any group on outbureau.com. But would love for all of you to join, share knowledge, connect up with each other. Great opportunity to connect with others from around the world. So matter of fact, there's a person in Germany who was the first person in the group and is not in a major city and is desperately looking for people to communicate with who understand her. So very exciting. And just yesterday, had a trans male person who's working on innovative prosthetics for the community, for the specifically trans male community, actually agreed to become the moderator of the group. So, cool. Well, the owner of the group, and then I'll maintain help, as needed, but just from a technical perspective. So it is a group now that is owned and moderated by a trans person, no longer just me. And so also just so that if there's any group on OutBüro that I have initially started, it's just, someone has to start something so people see the potential. But just know if there is a group already that exists, I'm more than happy to turn it over to someone else, because OutBüro is a community site and I want others to have ownership of it and take the reins and so forth. I can only do so much. Well, super. Well, it has been absolutely fantastic learning a little bit more about what you're doing. I personally love that you're focusing, or at least a portion of what you're doing is focusing on the health industry. That is just absolutely so needed. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that's extremely needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's anything I can do to make literally to make my community survive. This is what I'm doing, and I'm lucky, I'm lucky to be in the position of calling myself a trans activist. And everything that I do is, you can put it into the box of activism, and that I finally have a chance to live from that type of work. And I just encourage anyone who if you take trans people on board, and even if it's just getting some information, getting some expertise from our community, please pay our community a decent amount for the knowledge that we have, because there is no bachelor or master degree in being trans, but the experiences that I've gained throughout my life as a trans person is as valid as whatever certificate anyone can put on your table. So this needs to be also valued, the knowledge that we have, the community knowledge, as an expertise. And I can just, this is something that we need. We need support. We need allies. We need people, like you, Dennis, who help us to get a voice, to get people hear our stories. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for having me.
Well, absolutely. And we'll be working together and as a community to not just survive, yet thrive and grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's absolutely been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for staying with us to the end of this episode. If you happen to be viewing this on YouTube, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and click that bell. That bell will ensure that when you pop open YouTube, eating your popcorn and drinking your hot chocolate at night, that you will be notified of all future episodes as they become available. If you are listening to this on one of the 14 podcasting apps, be sure also to hit that follow, again, for the same reasons. Also, by the time you're airing this, you can watch us on Happy TV. You can find that at gethappy.tv. That is GETHAPPI.tv. Tune in to watch episodes on Get Happy TV with your friends. Thank you so much. This is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. Join us today at outbureau.com. Well, thank you. Bye-bye.